All right, diving in today, folks, we're going deep on something you might not think about every day, but that's absolutely crucial to how education works: teacher emotions.
Yeah, I might sound kind of touchy-feely, but stick with us. It gets really interesting.
We're taking a cue from a research review you sent our way: Teachers' Emotions and Teaching. Sutton and Wheatley, 2003.
Classic.
Our mission: figure out why these emotions matter and what the research actually says about them.
Thing is, if you look back at classic educational psychology, teacher emotions barely get a mention. You've got all this focus on cognition, what teachers believe, all that knowledge they're packing,
Right, the stuff you'd expect.
but emotions,
Wait,
almost like they were this weird little secret no one wanted to talk about.
and the review even mentions this whole Western thing about emotions being, irrational.
Oh yeah, huge cultural baggage. Like if
Yeah.
you're emotional, you're not logical, you're not objective.
Which is kind of funny, right? Because teaching involves so much interaction, so much human connection. How can emotions not be a part of that?
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so important. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher, a parent, or just someone who's fascinated by how humans work in different jobs.
Understanding the emotional world of teachers gives you this whole new perspective on what's really going on in classrooms.
Totally. And to really get into it, we got to think about emotions not just as like a single feeling, but as this whole process with different parts.
Okay, break it down for us.
So first you've got appraisal. That's how teachers interpret all the stuff happening around them, all those events. Then there's the subjective experience, basically what it feels like on the inside.
So, like that sinking feeling when your lesson plan totally bombs, or that warm fuzziness when a student has that aha moment.
You got it.
Yeah.
And along with that feeling comes all the physical stuff.
Hmm.
Heart racing, face getting flushed. Then you've got emotional expression, how those feelings show up on the outside, a smile, a sigh, even how your voice changes. And finally, action tendencies, those impulses to actually do something based on that emotion.
So, beaming with pride when a student nails it, or maybe stepping in when things get a little chaotic.
Exactly. And here's the thing. These parts don't always match up perfectly. A teacher could be super stressed on the inside but putting on a calm face for their students. Or they might feel this urge to react one way but choose a different response.
It's like they're juggling a million things at once.
You were sure. And the psychologists are now saying emotions are right up there with thoughts and motivation, like fundamental to how our minds work.
The review mentions a lot of the early research came from these big sociological studies, right? Like looking at the daily lives of teachers.
It's fascinating. A lot of this research was spurred by these huge school reform efforts, and they started to see how demanding and rewarding teaching is on an emotional level. It's not just about standing up there and teaching. It's about being a human being who's deeply affected by all these interactions and the whole school environment.
Right, it's not happening in a vacuum. Okay, so the review starts off with the positive emotions, and love and caring come up a lot.
Yeah, which makes sense. You're working with these young people, trying to create a supportive environment.
You'd hope that would be there.
And the research shows it's not just elementary teachers. You see it in middle and high school, too. There's even one study where a good chunk of middle school teachers said love was relevant to their work.
Wow.
Even though they didn't always talk about it openly, it shows you how deeply relational teaching is, even at those older ages. Then you've got the joy, the satisfaction, the pure pleasure of seeing students learn and progress.
Especially those students who've been struggling.
Totally. That's a huge one. And it's not just about test scores. It's about building relationships, those positive interactions that make teaching joyful.
And the little things too, right? Like when former students come back and share their successes, or even just a day where everyone's cooperating and the classroom vibes are good.
Absolutely. Those little wins make a big difference.
Mhm.
Smooth collaboration, supportive colleagues, positive parent interactions, all that adds up to a sense of accomplishment and pleasure that keeps teachers going. Then there are the more, I guess you could say, dynamic emotions. Excitement, humor, the stuff that comes from teaching being, well, unpredictable.
You never know what's going to happen next. The review mentions how beginning teachers feel that excitement even more, like the thrill of having their own classroom for the first time.
It's a new adventure.
Yeah.
And humor.
Hmm.
That often comes from those unexpected, sometimes absurd moments that happen in every classroom.
Yeah, gotta find a way to laugh. But of course, teaching isn't all sunshine and rainbows. The review also talks about the negative emotions, and honestly, it's kind of heavy.
Yeah, no sugarcoating here. Anger and frustration, they're definitely there. A lot of it comes from student misbehavior, which anyone who spent time in a classroom knows about. But it's also the stuff outside the classroom that makes it hard to actually teach effectively.
Like what?
Uncooperative colleagues, parents who aren't supportive, or even worse, actively undermine the school's efforts.
Oof. Oof, that's got to be tough.
And sometimes it's about the students themselves.
Yeah.
Teachers can get angry when they see students not putting in the effort, not living up to their potential. It's disheartening.
And when you're already tired and stressed, those negative emotions just hit harder,
Uh,
right?
Definitely. And it creates this vicious cycle. The review even talks about teachers using fake anger to manage the classroom, like putting on a show. And as they get more experience, they usually get better at handling their anger. It's like another skill they have to learn.
Emotional labor, for sure. Then there's anxiety. Apparently, that's super common for new teachers who are still figuring things out.
Yeah, they're learning the ropes, dealing with all this complexity, plus the uncertainty of whether they're actually doing a good job.
And even dealing with parents can be anxiety-inducing when you're new.
Big time. But it's not just new teachers. Experienced teachers can feel anxious about their effectiveness, too. Like, am I actually making a difference? It's this constant pressure to measure up.
Like in any job, but maybe even more so in teaching where you're constantly being observed and evaluated.
Exactly. You're always under the microscope, and that scrutiny can be really stressful. Then you've got helplessness, which can pop up when teachers feel like they can't really make a difference. Maybe it's systemic issues in the school or really challenging home situations for their students.
It's that feeling of hitting a wall. The review also talks about guilt, and that seems to be especially strong for elementary teachers. They feel so responsible for these young kids.
Yeah, and teaching is kind of open-ended, right?
Yeah.
There's always more you could be doing. Plus, there's this societal expectation that teachers should be these endlessly giving figures.
Almost like saints.
Right. And that pressure to be perfect can be so heavy. And then there's sadness. A lot of times, it's about students with tough home lives. They see these kids going through hard stuff, and they feel this sense of loss, this helplessness.
Because they can't fix everything.
Exactly. So yeah, teaching is emotionally complex. You've got this whole spectrum of emotions, positive and negative. But the big question is, how do these emotions actually affect what goes on in the classroom? The review dives into how they impact teachers' thinking, their cognition.
Okay, so what do they find?
One of the big takeaways is that negative emotions are like attention magnets. They can totally hijack a teacher's focus.
So instead of focusing on the lesson, they're caught up in whatever's triggering that negativity.
Exactly. The review talks about how student misbehavior can be super distracting. It pulls teachers away from their goals, and it's something that needs more research. Like, how does teacher emotion play into classroom management and discipline? We always hear teachers should stay calm and objective, but emotions are obviously playing a huge role in those moments.
It's way more complicated than just saying, keep your cool.
For sure. And then there's memory. Emotionally charged events, good or bad, stick with us more than neutral ones.
Like remembering those tough interactions with certain students or parents more vividly than other stuff?
Yeah, and that can create biases without the teacher even realizing it. Plus, really intense emotions can mess with our memory.
How so?
Like, you might remember the main details of an event super clearly, but forget the context. A teacher who gets really angry with a couple disruptive students might not even notice what the rest of the class was doing.
That's wild.
And then there's mood congruent memory. If you're feeling happy, you're more likely to remember happy stuff. But the review says we can actually use our memories to control our emotions.
Wait, really?
Yeah, like if you're feeling stressed, you could deliberately remember a funny or relaxing memory to calm down. It's like our mind's trying to keep things balanced.
That's so cool. Okay, so we've got attention, we've got memory. What about how teachers categorize students and solve problems in the classroom?
Well, it seems like being in a positive mood can make teachers see students more favorably. They might see them as engaged or trying hard, which then affects how they interact with them.
So like a self-fulfilling prophecy, almost.
In a way. But on the flip side, high anxiety can make it harder for teachers to think clearly and solve problems effectively. It's like their mental bandwidth gets overloaded.
Which makes sense. If you're super anxious, you're not going to be at your best.
Right. But the good news is that positive emotions, like genuine joy or interest, can actually broaden a teacher's thinking. It can lead to more creative ideas and better coping skills.
So when you're feeling good, you're more open to new possibilities. Makes sense.
Now let's talk about motivation. The review says negative emotions can totally zap intrinsic motivation.
That makes sense. If you're constantly frustrated or sad, it's hard to stay passionate about teaching.
Exactly. It sucks the joy out of it. And it seems like positive emotions might be essential for keeping that motivation going. It ties into things like feeling flow at work and feeling competent.
Feeling like you're in your element and you're good at what you do.
Right. The review also talks about how emotions can affect how teachers explain student outcomes. Like, if a student does poorly on a test, a teacher who's feeling angry might blame it on the student's laziness, while a teacher who's feeling sad might think about the student's home life.
And that changes how they react to the student.
Big time. That kind of bias can be a big problem if teachers constantly blame students without considering other factors. The review also talks about efficacy beliefs, which is basically a teacher's confidence in their own ability to teach well. It looks like positive moods can boost that self-efficacy, while negative moods can tank it.
So a teacher who's feeling good and in control probably also feels more capable in the classroom.
Exactly. And lastly, it seems like positive moods might actually lead teachers to set more ambitious goals, both for their students and for themselves.
So they're aiming higher when they're feeling good.
That's the idea. And the review points out that teachers might even have these emotional goals, whether they realize it or not,
Right.
like wanting to experience more positive emotions and less negative ones.
And that could shape their decisions in the classroom, even down to trying new teaching methods. Okay, so we've talked about how teachers feel and how it affects them. But what about the students? They're picking up on all this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Kids are like emotion detectors.
Yeah.
The review talks about how they notice all these little cues, from a teacher's flushed face to their tone of voice, their facial expressions, everything.
So even if a teacher's trying to hide their true feelings, the students can still tell.
Pretty much. And negative emotions, like yelling or frustration, can really affect them, even if it's not directed at them specifically. It can make them feel small, sad, even guilty.
And it sounds like teacher anger can actually make students act out more, although the review also says that in some cases, showing anger can set boundaries and enforce rules.
It's a tricky balance. And how teachers react to student successes or failures can shape how students see their own learning. Like if a teacher gets angry when a student doesn't try hard, the student might start to think that's how they should feel too.
Wow, that's powerful. And if teachers always seem unhappy about mistakes, students might get discouraged and avoid challenges. They don't want to disappoint the teacher.
That's a big takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
But on a more positive note, students really value teachers who genuinely care about them. That's been linked to more motivation, better behavior, and more engagement overall.
That human connection really matters.
It's essential. And enthusiasm, enjoying the subject, using humor appropriately, all of that can make students more interested and less likely to avoid tough stuff.
It's like they're feeding off the teacher's energy.
For sure. Now, the review also throws in some important critiques. It says we still need more research to prove the direct link between specific teacher emotions and specific outcomes, both for teachers and students.
Right, because it's not always as simple as saying positive emotions are good, negative emotions are bad.
And teachers often feel a mix of emotions at the same time. You can care deeply about a student and still be frustrated by their behavior. The review also makes a big point about how culture and context play a huge role in how teacher emotions are seen and understood. What's considered appropriate in one culture or subject might be totally different in another.
So it's not one size fits all.
Nope. The review gives an example of student teachers who were placed in inner-city schools with mostly African-American students. They're surprised by how emotionally expressive the teaching environment was compared to what they'd learned in their college classes.
So their training didn't prepare them for the reality of that specific context.
Right. And the review also talks about how cultures that value interdependence might have different rules for expressing emotions in the classroom compared to more individualistic cultures.
That's fascinating. It's like there's this whole unspoken language of emotions that varies depending on where you are and who you're with.
It's true. And even the subject matter and the age of the students can make a difference. You wouldn't expect a preschool teacher and a high school physics teacher to have the same emotional style. It's all connected.
So much nuance. Now, the review also talks about where research should go from here, right?
Yeah, they lay out some key areas where we need to dig deeper. One of the biggies is rethinking classroom management and discipline.
So not just saying be consistent or have clear rules, but looking at the emotions involved.
Exactly. They argue that understanding the emotions at play, both for teachers and students, can help us create more effective and compassionate approaches to discipline.
It's not just about suppressing emotions, it's about understanding them and using them constructively.
Right. The review says new teachers often struggle with classroom management, and their emotional responses to misbehavior can be really intense, sometimes even making things worse.
It's like they get swept up in the moment.
Exactly. So figuring out how teachers can regulate their emotions in those tough situations could be huge. And it's not just about controlling negative emotions, it's also about knowing how and when to express positive emotions in a way that's genuine and effective.
It's like finding the right emotional tone for each situation.
Right. The review also suggests that we need to understand how teachers interpret student behavior. Like, do they see it as defiance or a cry for help? That interpretation shapes their response.
It's about getting to the root of the problem.
Another big area for future research is how teachers adopt new teaching methods and reforms. It turns out emotions play a big role in whether they embrace or resist change.
Which makes sense, right? If a new method feels emotionally draining or like it'll damage relationships with students, teachers might not be so keen on it.
Exactly. The review says people who are developing these reforms need to think more about the emotional impact on teachers. If teachers think a new approach will cause them more stress than satisfaction, they're less likely to go all in.
Understanding those emotional responses could be the key to making reforms actually work.
Absolutely. And then there's teacher training. We know a lot about how teachers develop their beliefs and knowledge, but the role of emotions in shaping new teachers is a bit of a mystery.
Like, are those early emotional experiences super intense? Do they affect how teachers learn to teach?
That's what we need to find out. And what about meta-emotions? How teachers think and feel about their own emotions and the emotions of others in the classroom.
So, like, a new teacher's beliefs about whether it's okay to feel angry with a student?
Exactly. That can totally shape how they handle tough situations.
The review even talks about how the balance between positive and negative emotions for new teachers might be linked to burnout and whether they stay in the profession.
Yeah, if those early years are just a constant emotional roller coaster, it's easy to see why some people would burn out and quit. Absolutely. And lastly, the review says we need more research on how specific emotions affect teacher motivation. How does feeling sad or overwhelmed impact their energy and enthusiasm? How do emotional regulation skills contribute to resilience?
There's so much to explore.
For sure. The review emphasizes that we need to look beyond just the surface feelings. We need to understand how teachers interpret situations, the physical changes that come with emotions, how they express those emotions, and what they do as a result.
It's about looking at the whole picture.
Exactly. And they suggest using a variety of research methods, like classroom observations, physiological measurements, even personal diaries.
To get a more complete and nuanced understanding of this complex part of teaching.
Totally. And at the end of the day, it all comes back to this. Teacher emotions are a vital part of education.
A part that we often ignore.
They affect the teachers themselves, their teaching, and the students' learning. Both positive and negative emotions matter, and the cultural context plays a huge role in how those emotions are experienced and understood.
So, as you consider how deeply these teacher emotions are intertwined with everything that happens in education,
It raises a big question for you to think about.
what can we do to better support teachers' emotional well-being? What strategies can we implement in teacher training, school cultures, or even policies to make things better?
Because acknowledging and understanding this emotional dimension is essential for improving education as a whole.
It's about seeing teachers as human beings with real feelings, not just robots delivering lessons.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that wraps up our deep dive into teacher emotions. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.